Good day, friends and viewers. Let us discuss today the short story written by a famous American writer, Edgar Allan Poe. The name of this short story is The Cask of Amontillado. The Cask of Amontillado. It is the story of revenge, murder, and be careful you trust horror story. And it is the story full of irony, published in 1846 in November. And it is the story about unnamed Italian city. So let us discuss this, the Cask of Amontillado. The Cask of Amontillado has been almost universally referred to as Edgar Allan Poe's most perfect short story. In fact, it has often been considered to be one of the world's most perfect short story. Furthermore, it conforms to and illustrates perfectly many of Poe's literary theories about the nature of the short story. That is, it is short and can be read at one sitting. It is a mood piece with every sentence contributing to the total effect. It is completely unified work, and while it is seemingly simple, it abounds in ironies of many kinds. Finally, every line and comment contributes to the totality or unity of the effect that Poe sought to achieve. The plot is quite simple. The first-person narrator, whom we later discover to be named Montresor, announces immediately that someone named Fortunato has injured him repeatedly and has recently insulted him. Montresor can stand no more. He vows revenge upon Fortunato. The remainder of the story deals with Montresor's method of entrapping Fortunato and effecting his revenge upon the unfortunate Fortunato. Foremost is the fact that Montresor has never let Fortunato know of his hatred. Accordingly, one evening during carnival time, a time when much frivolity and celebration would be taking place, Montresor set his fiendish and mad plan into motion with full confidence that he would never be discovered. In fact, at the end of the story, we, the readers, are certain that his atrocity will never be discovered, knowing that Fortunato considered himself a great expert or connoisseur of fine wines, and especially a devotee of a sherry known as Amontillado. Montresor flattered him by obscurely asking his opinion on a newly acquired cask of Amontillado. He tantalized Fortunato with the rare liquor, even pretending that his vaults where the wine was stored had too much dampness and nitrate for Fortunato's affection. However, Fortunato was determined to taste the wine and insist on being taken to Montresor's home. Montresor complied while wrapping himself in a cloak to make sure that he would not be recognized. Earlier, he had let all of the servants off for the night, using the excuse of the carnival. In this way, In this way, he would avoid arousing Fortunato's suspicions and would also prevent anyone from witnessing the atrocities he planned to commit. Apparently, Montresor had been planning this revenge for a long time and ironically had chosen carnival time as the setting for his most horrible type of crime. Amid the gaiety of the carnival, he was sure he would avoid any possibility of being detected. As they descended into the vault, Fortunato walked unsteadily and the bells upon his cap jingled as they descended, creating a further carnival atmosphere or a joyous time, a time which will ironically end soon with the living death of the Fortunato. As they passed deeper into the vault, the nitre caused Fortunato to cough constantly, but he was drunkenly determined to continue. At one point, however, Montresor paused and offered Fortunato a bottle of Medoc wine to help ward off the cold and the fumes of the nitre. This seemingly kind act, of course, carries undertones of the most vicious irony, since what appears to be an act of kindness is only an act of performed to keep the victim alive long enough to get him to the niche where he will be buried alive. Fortunato drunk the Medoc and once again became boisterous, and once more his bells jingled. Fortunato toasted Montresor's buried ancestors, and Montresor returned the toast to Fortunato's long life. When Fortunato noted how extensive the vaults were, Montresor told him that he heard that Montresors were a great and numerous family. Then in his drunkenness, Fortunato says that he has forgotten what Montresor's coat of arms looked like. This statement at the time of story setting would be yet one more of the many blatant insults for which Montresor hates Fortunato. He states that his family coat of arms has on it a huge human foot of gold in fields azure. So, thus both the motto and the coat of arms imply that entire Montresor family history is filled with acts of revenge. As the two men proceeded further along the tunnel, the cold and nitre fume increased, and Fortunato asked for another drink. Montresor gave him a bottle of de Grave, which Fortunato emptied and then tossed the bottle into the air with certain symbolic gesture. At this point, Fortunato was sure that Montresor didn't understand the gesture because it belonged to the secret order of the Mason, in order that Fortunato was certain that Montresor couldn't belong to, thus flinging Montresor another insult, and unknowingly bringing himself closer to his living death. Fortunato then showed him a sign of the Mason, a trowel which he brought with him. So, as they continued their journey, we discovered that there are numerous catacombs of long deceased relatives. Thus, they have progressed to the place of death, where Fortunato will spend the rest of his existence, ironically, alongside the relatives of a man who hates him with an unbelievable intensity. At one of the catacombs, Montresor led Fortunato into a small crypt or niche, which was in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. Montresor told Fortunato that Amontillado was inside. When Fortunato stepped inside, he ran into the granite wall, and Montresor quickly locked him to the wall with a chain. Fortunato was too drunk to even realize what was going on, much less resisted his imprisonment. Very quickly, Montresor uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar and began to wall up the entrance. With only the first tire complete, Montresor heard deep moans from within, and by the time he had laid the fourth tire, he heard the furious vibration of the chain. Resuming his chore, he completed 3 more tires. Suddenly there was a succession of loud and shrill screams from inside the crypt, and at first Montresor was momentarily frightened, and then he delighted in joining in with the screams. Then there was silence. By the time Montresor had finished the last tire, with only one more stone to be put into place, there came a long, low laugh from within. Then Fortunato's voice called upon Montresor to put an end to this joke. Finally, Fortunato pleaded for the love of God, Montresor, a request which Montresor mocked by repeating the phrase. Then Montresor looked through the remaining opening with his torch and could see nothing, but he did hear the jingling of the Fortunato's bell as he laid the last stone in place. For 50 years, he tells us, no one has disturbed the peace of this place. As in this discussion, the story abounds in ironies. The name of the victim, Fortunato, meaning the fortunate one, is the first irony. Then too, the entire situation is ironic. That is, the most terrible and gruesome deeds are executed in a carnival atmosphere of gaiety and happiness. Montresor is using the atmosphere of celebration to disguise the horribly atrocious act of entombing a man alive. So the reader should perhaps at one point ask himself, who is Montresor? And then, since Montresor seemed to be apparently addressing someone, the reader should ask himself whom Montresor is talking to or writing about, and why, since the deed was committed some 50 years ago. At the time of the deed, Montresor could not even be even young person. He must now be very old. It could be that he is talking to one of his descendants, or else making his last confession to a priest. After all, from what we can glean from the story, Montresor, in spite of perhaps noble family, and he is also a person of considerable taste in gems and painting, in wines, in another matter, and it is evident that he possesses considerable intelligence, albeit a type of diabolic intelligence. In his plan to entomb Fortunato in Montresor catacomb, he was clever at the right time. His entire plan of revenge was contrived with such perfection that Montresor had to be an exceptionally gifted person. But then again, the question rises, how could a gifted person imagine insult of such magnitude as to cause him to effect such a horrible revenge? So the entire story is the nature of insult that could evoke such a well-planned diabolic scheme of revenge. So Fortunato, unaware of it to such an extent that he would accompany the person that he has insulted into such a dreadful place, or was he simply drunk with carnival madness that was occurring throughout the city? So the double ironic viewpoint continues on every plan. When Montesor and Fortunato, he smiled continually at Fortunato, who thought he saw a smile of warmth and friendliness, when in reality the smile was a satanic smile in anticipation of Fortunato's entombment, like was Montresor's first word to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friend, this is the story of revenge. This is the story of the murder of a man who had committed with his friend Fortunato by Montresor. Thank you very much.